The moment the human whistled, everything changed. Ambassador Kesrick of the Starry Dominion froze, his translucent eyes widening as the shrill, rising note cut through the tense silence of the negotiation chamber. The sound wasn't natural. It wasn't something his species, or any species he had ever encountered, should be able to produce. And yet, the human had done it, right in front of him, and now the room was shaking. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls, through the floors, through the very fabric of the station itself. It wasn't an alarm. It wasn't an attack. It was a signal. Kesrick's mandibles clicked in unease. What did you just do? The human, Commander David Renner, didn't answer immediately. He exhaled slowly, tapping 2 fingers against the metal table, as if counting the seconds. Then a smile, small, knowing, and that terrified Kesrick more than anything. You should probably sit down, Renner said. Kesrick's throat tightened. Then the stars outside shifted, and the human fleet arrived. Kesrick had spent years studying human tactics. He had learned their formations, their strategies, their diplomatic maneuvers, but he had never not once heard of this. The Starry had jammed all known communication channels. No transmissions had been sent. No distress beacons activated. And yet, the moment the human had whistled, the Terran fleet had materialized. Not just 1 or 2 warships, an entire armada, sleek battlecruisers, silent dreadnoughts, vessels designed for one thing: dominance. Panic spread through the Starry delegation. Kesrick could hear their frantic clicking, their nervous scraping of claws against the floor. They had planned for resistance. They had prepared for counterattacks. But this was something else. Impossible, one of his advisors whispered. Kesrick wasn't so sure anymore. Renner leaned back in his chair. I'll ask again. Would you like to renegotiate? Kesrick's mandibles twitched. The human wasn't bluffing. He had never been bluffing. And now the Starry were out of time. The Starry delegation fell into chaos. Advisors chattered in their rapid, insectoid tongue. Kesrick could hear the frantic calculations running through their minds, attempting to explain, to rationalize, to find a way out. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. One moment they had held control. The next it was slipping through their claws. Kesrick forced himself to breathe, to think. The human's fleet hadn't fired. Not yet. That meant there was still a chance. Still an opening. He had to take it. Kesrick raised a trembling claw. His voice steadied. Commander Renner. The human met his gaze. Calm. Unshaken. A predator who knew the prey had already trapped itself. Kesrick exhaled. We were under the impression that humans had no form of instant communication beyond their technology. Renner smirked. You were misinformed. Kesrick's mandibles twitched. So this whistling, he said carefully. It is a signal? Renner's fingers drummed against the table. Something like that. Kesrick fought the urge to snap his claws. The humans had done it again. They had played dumb, acted weaker than they were, all to catch the Starry off guard. And it had worked. How? Kesrick asked, barely keeping the frustration from his voice. How did they hear you? Renner's smile widened. The same way we hear each other. Kesrick's mind raced. That wasn't possible. There were no frequencies that could travel unassisted through vacuum. No subspace signals that had gone undetected. No latent psionic pathways. And yet, the human fleet had responded instantly, which meant the humans had another way, a secret, a weapon, and the Starry had never seen it coming. The fleet outside did not waver. They hung in the abyss, their dark hulls reflecting the distant stars, waiting, watching, one order away from turning the station into wreckage. Renner tapped his fingers again, once, twice, 3 times. Outside, a Terran dreadnought adjusted position. Kesrick felt his stomach twist. He was outmatched, outplayed, and if he made the wrong move now, there would be no negotiations, only war. Kesrick made his decision. Slowly, he folded his hands over one another. Deliberate, measured, a gesture of deference, submission. Commander, he said carefully, it appears we have misunderstood human capabilities. Renner inclined his head. Appears so. Kesrick exhaled. You asked if we wished to renegotiate. He swallowed. His advisors were silent, waiting. He lowered his head. We do. Renner leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. Good, he said, and then he whistled again. Short, sharp. Outside, the fleet shifted. Not forward, not into attack formation. Back, just slightly. A warning, a reminder. Kesrick had chosen correctly, and the negotiations had truly begun. The negotiations stretched into the following hours. Kesrick kept his claws tight against the table, every muscle in his body tense. Renner remained relaxed, too relaxed. He knew he had already won. The Starry were no longer in control. The humans had outmaneuvered them in a way Kesrick had never seen before. Not through brute force, not through threats, through something far worse. Uncertainty. The Starry prided themselves on knowing everything about their enemies twice before making demands. But now they knew nothing. How had the humans done it? How had they called their fleet with nothing more than a whistle? The question gnawed at him, and the more he thought about it, the more he realized the truth. It wasn't the humans that were weak. It was the Starry. They had assumed superiority, assumed control, and because of that, they had never thought to ask the right questions. Now it was too late. Renner steepled his fingers. "We're willing to adjust the terms," he said. Kesrick's mandibles twitched. Willing, as if they were offering mercy, as if this had ever been a fair fight. Still, he had no choice. "What are your conditions?" he asked. Renner tilted his head slightly, pretending to think. Kesrick knew better. The humans had decided long before they entered this chamber. This was just for show, a final, subtle twist of the knife. Finally, Renner exhaled. "First," he said, "your expansion into Terran space ceases immediately." Kesrick stiffened. That was expected. "And second," Renner continued, "your fleets withdraw from all contested systems within the next cycle." Kesrick clenched his jaw. That was more than expected. It was humiliating. The Starry had spent years expanding, pushing their borders, establishing dominance. Now the humans wanted them to undo it all, and Kesrick knew if he refused, that fleet outside would not wait much longer. His claws tapped against the table. Slow, deliberate. Renner watched him, waiting. Kesrick inhaled sharply, and then he nodded. The room exhaled. Renner leaned back slightly, satisfied. Excellent. The tension in Kesrick's chest didn't ease, because he knew the war had never truly begun, but it had been lost all the same. And now the humans had made sure the Starry would never underestimate them again. The fleet outside remained for 3 full rotations, a silent reminder, a shadow that loomed over the station, over the Starry Dominion, over everything Kesrick had once believed about human weakness. When the withdrawal was complete, when every system had been vacated, Renner whistled one final time. The sound was sharp, short, definitive, and in the void beyond, the Terran fleet disappeared. Silent, seamless, controlled. Kesrick sat in the dark of the empty chamber. His advisors were gone. The negotiations were over. The war had been lost before it had even begun, and the humans had rewritten everything. The Starry would not make the same mistake again. No, they would not challenge the Terrans. Not now, not ever, because they understood. The humans had hidden their true nature, had disguised their strength, had let the Starry think they were superior. Also that, when the moment came, they could remind them otherwise. And Kesrick, he would never forget, because the last thing he had seen before the Terran fleet vanished was Renner's smile. Calm, knowing, dangerous, and Kesrick knew the humans had been underestimated for the last time. The silence after the humans left was deafening. Kesrick remained at the negotiation table long after his advisors had departed. The weight of his decision pressed against him. Not just surrender, not just retreat, a realization, a truth far more dangerous than any fleet. The humans had not just won, they had revealed themselves, and the Starry were not ready. The Dominion tried to bury the incident. The official records labeled it a mutual de-escalation, a diplomatic compromise, but those who had been there, Kesrick, his advisors, the officers aboard the station, they knew better. The humans had left a message without speaking a word, and the message was clear. Challenge us again, and you will not see us coming. Kesrick was summoned to the Starry High Council within the next cycle. The chamber was vast, carved from obsidian stone, illuminated by the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi. The council sat in a semicircle, elders who had overseen the Dominion for centuries. They had ruled over conquered species, had crushed rebellion, had forged an empire on the foundation of dominance. But now, for the first time in history, they looked uneasy. Kesrick bowed. The Supreme Arbiter clicked his mandibles. "We have reviewed your report." Kesrick said nothing. He knew better than to speak first. The Arbiter's eyes narrowed. "Explain to me how the humans called their fleet without technology." Kesrick exhaled slowly. "I do not know." The words tasted bitter. An admission of ignorance. A failure. The other counselors shifted. The Arbiter clicked his claws against the stone table. "Then find out." Kesrick left the chamber with a single directive. Understand the humans. Learn their secret. Discover how they had done the impossible. And ensure that the Dominion was never blindsided again. But the more he researched, the more he investigated, the less sense it made. There were no hidden signals, no transmissions, no psychic interference. The humans had not used any known form of communication. And yet, the moment Renner had whistled, the fleet had appeared. Kesrick scoured the Dominion archives, cross-referenced every intercepted Terran transmission, analyzed every recorded instance of human military action. There was nothing, not a single record of this ability, not a single instance evidence of a human summoning reinforcements through sound alone, which meant either the Terrans had developed an entirely new form of communication or they had always had it, and the Starry had simply never noticed. The more Keswick studied, the more he felt it, a creeping unease, the sensation of standing in the dark and realizing something had been watching all along. Had the humans hidden this ability? Had they deliberately let the galaxy believe they were weaker than they were? Or worse, had they simply never needed to reveal it until now? And if that was true, what else had they kept hidden? The Dominion shifted. For the first time in centuries, the Starry slowed their expansion. Their fleets held position. Their warships remained in defensive formation. The galaxy noticed. Other species whispered. The Starry had been humbled, had been forced to retreat. But no one knew why, because Keswick had ensured the truth was buried. The last thing the Dominion needed was for the rest of the galaxy to realize what he now knew. The humans were not to be provoked, and if war ever came, it would not be fought on the Dominion's terms. It would be fought on theirs. Years passed. The Dominion recovered. Keswick was promoted to Grand Strategist. He oversaw fleet movements, defensive planning, long-term expansion projects, but he never forgot, never stopped watching the Terrans. And then one day, a single intercepted transmission changed everything. A report from a small, neutral outpost. Harmless, unimportant, except for one detail. The station had detected an anomaly, a brief fluctuation in gravitational forces, a distortion in local space, and the sound of a whistle. Keswick's claws clenched. The humans were testing something, and whatever it was, the galaxy was not ready. The Starry Dominion did not act, did not attack, did not confront, because for all their power, for all their fleets, for all their history of conquest, they knew. The Terrans were waiting, and the next time the Starry heard that sound, it would be too late. The whisper of the whistle spread, not through the official records, not through public knowledge, but in quiet conversations, in the uneasy glances of Starry officers, in the way Dominion admirals hesitated before mentioning Terran space. The war had never happened, but the fear had already taken root. Keswick knew it, felt it, and he wasn't alone. On the far edges of the galaxy, beyond the reach of both human and Starry Dominion, something stirred. Other species had been watching, listening, taking note, and the rumors they had grown. The humans had done something impossible, called an entire fleet with nothing more than a sound. No technology, no visible transmission, just a whistle. It made no sense, and that was what terrified them most, because power could be measured, fleets could be counted, weapons could be matched, but this was something else, something unknown, and the unknown was the deadliest thing in the galaxy. The first attempt to replicate the signal came from the Vari, a technologically advanced race, paranoid, cautious. They had intercepted the event, had analyzed the whistle, had run simulations, and when they thought they understood it, they tested it. Keswick watched the report with morbid fascination. The Vari had gathered their fleet, positioned their warships in a defensive ring, and then one of their officers had whistled. Nothing happened. First, then something did. Not a fleet, not a response, something worse. Silence. The entire Vari station had gone dark. No distress call, no final transmission, just gone. When the nearest patrol arrived, they found no wreckage, no survivors, just an empty void where the station had once been, as if it had never existed at all. The Dominion hushed the findings, buried the knowledge, because now they understood. The whistle was not a call, it was a key, and the humans were the only ones who knew what it truly unlocked. Keswick did not sleep that night. He sat in his chamber, claws tapping against his desk, thoughts racing. The humans had done something irreversible, not just to the Starry, not just to the Vari, to the galaxy itself. They had introduced something new, something unexplainable, something terrifying, and now everyone was listening, waiting, hoping they would never hear that sound again, because the next time they did, the universe might not survive it. The galaxy had changed, not through war, not through treaties, but through something far more dangerous. A question, a sound, a mystery that no species had the answer to, and so they watched, they waited, they feared. But the humans, they did not speak of it, they did not clarify. They let the galaxy wonder, let the rumors spread, let the unknown do their work for them, because power was not just strength, it was control, and the humans controlled the silence. Keswick wasn't sure what haunted him more, the event itself, or the knowledge that the humans were letting them drown in uncertainty. The Dominion Council demanded answers, but what could he tell them? The humans had weaponized something beyond their understanding. And they had done it without firing a single shot, without threatening a single planet, without waging a single war. The whistle had been enough. The implication had been enough. And that was the greatest show of power the galaxy had ever seen. The next time Kesric saw Renner, it was by chance. A diplomatic summit on neutral ground. Terrans and Stari had avoided direct contact for years. And yet, here they were, standing in the same room. Kesric felt his mandibles tighten. The human looked the same, casual, relaxed, unbothered, as if the past had never happened, as if he didn't hold the greatest secret in the universe. Kesric hesitated. Then he stepped closer. "Commander Renner," he said carefully. The human turned, raised an eyebrow. "Ambassador Kesric." Kesric searched his expression, for deception, for hidden amusement, for anything, but Renner gave him nothing, just polite curiosity, as if he hadn't changed the balance of power in the galaxy, as if he hadn't set an entire dominion into a silent panic. Kesric exhaled sharply. He had spent years analyzing every possible explanation, every theory, every variable, but there was only one way to know the truth, so he asked. "The whistle," Kesric said. "What was it?" Renner smiled. "Slow, easy." And then he whistled. Short, sharp, perfectly ordinary, perfectly human, and Kesric felt the room go cold, because nothing happened. No fleet, no alarms, no sudden shift in the stars, just a sound, a meaningless, harmless sound. And Renner, he chuckled. "Funny how that works, isn't it?" And then he walked away, leaving Kesric standing in the silence, understanding, fearing, because the greatest trick the humans had ever pulled was making the galaxy believe. And now they would never know what was real, and what was just a whistle. The unease never left. Not for Kesric, not for the Dominion, not for any species that had witnessed what the humans had done, because that was the true horror. Not the power itself, not the fleet, not the impossible communication. It was the uncertainty, the not knowing, the quiet, creeping realization that the humans had rewritten the rules of war without firing a single shot. And now the galaxy had to live with it. Other empires tried to investigate, tried to pry into Terran military operations, tried to decipher the truth, but they found nothing. Not a single confirmed record of human fleets responding to whistles. Not a single report of any technology that could explain it. Not even whispers from Terran defectors. The humans had either hidden it perfectly or it had never existed at all. And that was worse, because it meant the galaxy would never know. It meant every species would have to ask the same question every time they faced a human. Every time they entered a negotiation. Every time a war threatened to break out. What if they whistle? What happens then? And no one wanted to find out. Kesric had once believed the Dominion was the greatest power in the galaxy. Now he knew better, because power was not just strength. It was fear. It was control. It was letting the enemy imagine their own defeat before a battle had even begun. And the humans, they had mastered it. Years passed. The Dominion did not challenge Terran space again. Not openly, not secretly, because the question lingered. A simple, terrible question. If the humans could summon an entire fleet with nothing more than a whistle, what else were they hiding? What else had they not yet shown? What else had they been waiting for? And Kesric, for all his knowledge, for all his study, would never know, because the humans would never tell. And that was the true victory. Not war, not conquest, not destruction, just a single sound and the galaxy's silence that followed. Forever, the echoes of that whistle stretched farther than anyone could have predicted. The Vari never attempted their experiments again. The Stari never sought to expand into Terran space. The Dominion fleets stayed within their own borders, not because they feared retaliation, but because they feared an answer. An answer to the question no one dared ask. What would happen if the humans truly needed to summon their fleet? Would it be like before? Would the ships arrive in silence? Or would the galaxy witness something far worse? Something final? No one knew, and no one wanted to find out. The Terrans, for their part, remained silent. They continued their expansion, slow, steady, methodical, not aggressive, not invasive, just present. A growing shadow on the galactic stage, one that never spoke of the past, never clarified, never explained. Every treaty they signed, every alliance they formed, every negotiation they entered, it all carried the same weight, the same unspoken warning, the same subtle, terrifying power, because any time an enemy considered pushing too far, they hesitated. And in that hesitation, the humans won. Kesric watched the years unfold with growing unease. He saw the galaxy shift, saw alliances form not out of trust but out of fear, saw even the strongest empires bend under the weight of a simple possibility, that the humans were always one step ahead, that they knew something no one else did, that at any moment they could end everything. everything. Not with war, not with destruction, but with a sound, a simple sound, and that was enough. There were no more wars with the Terrans. Not because they were too strong, not because their fleets were unmatched, but because the galaxy could not afford to be wrong. The humans had created the perfect deterrent. Not a weapon, not a strategy, something far more insidious. Doubt. Because if there was even the smallest chance that the whistle was real, if there was even the faintest possibility that they could summon their fleet instantly, then war was suicide. And no empire was willing to take that risk. Decades passed. Histories were rewritten. The story of the whistle faded into legend. A ghost of a tale, whispered among diplomats, feared by strategists, questioned by scholars. Had it really happened? Had the fleet truly answered? Or had it all been an illusion, a deception, a masterful trick played on the entire galaxy? No one knew. No one ever would. And that was the greatest victory of all. Because the truth no longer mattered. Only the fear. And as long as the galaxy feared the whistle, the humans had already won. Forever, the galaxy moved on. Empires rose and fell. Borders shifted. Wars ignited. But never with the Terrans. Not directly. Not openly. Because the whisper of the whistle remained. A shadow in every war room. A specter in every strategy meeting. The one calculation no fleet commander could make. The one variable no empire could predict. And so they left the humans alone. They watched them expand. But this time the young starry commanders did not hesitate. They moved into Terran space. Not with weapons. Not with warships. With arrogance. With certainty. With the belief that they understood the game better than their predecessors. That the humans had been playing a trick all along. That the whistle was nothing more than a fable. And so they waited. They watched. And when no retaliation came, they laughed. For 3 days, the starry fleet remained in Terran space, broadcasting their position, daring a response, challenging the ghost of an old fear. And then, on the 4th day, one of their officers received a transmission. Not from a warship, not from a government, from a single Terran civilian, an old man, sitting on the edge of a station, looking out at the stars, and whistling. The starry fleet disappeared. Not attacked, not destroyed, not conquered, just gone. The ships, the officers, the entire task force, erased. No wreckage, no distress signals, no remains, as if they had never existed at all. The galaxy went silent. The young ones stopped asking questions. And Kesric, he sat in his chair, looking at the stars, listening to the reports, and smiled, because he had always known. The humans had never needed to prove themselves. Not then, not now, not ever. The galaxy had forgotten, and the humans had reminded them, the same way they always did, with a single quiet sound, a whistle, and the silence that followed. There would be no more questions, no more tests, no more foolish attempts to prove the humans wrong, because now even the youngest of the new generation understood. The truth did not matter. Reality did not matter. All that mattered was that no one wanted to find out, and that was power, pure, absolute, unquestioned, and it would last forever. The lesson was learned. Again, the starry retreated. Silence settled over the galaxy once more, but this time it would last, because now every species, every empire, every warlord who had ever dreamed of conquest knew better. The humans did not need to fight, did not need to threaten, did not need to defend. They only needed to exist, and the galaxy would police itself. Years passed. The story of the whistle grew into something else. It was no longer just a warning, no longer just a ghost. It had become doctrine, a fundamental rule of the universe, constant, like gravity, like time, something that had no proof, something that had no logic, and yet something no one questioned, because no one wanted to test it, because no one wanted to hear that sound, because no one wanted to know. Kesric's time was ending. He could feel it in his bones, the weight of years pressing down. He had lived through the shift, had watched it unfold, had seen the galaxy transform under the quiet pressure of a single sound, and now it was his time to go. He sat beneath the stars, his mind drifting, his thoughts slow. He had spent his life trying to understand the humans, and yet even now he did not. He never would, because that was the trick. That was the secret. The humans had never explained, never clarified, never given anyone the satisfaction of an answer. They had left the galaxy to wonder, to fear, to remember, and Kesric, he understood one thing. That was all they had ever needed. His last thought, his final whisper, was not one of fear, not one of regret, just a quiet, simple truth. They never had to do anything at all, and as his vision faded, as the stars stretched beyond his reach, he swore he could hear it. Distant, faint, soft, a whistle, and the silence that followed. Forever, the galaxy continued. Empires rose, empires fell, but one thing remained the same. One thing one was never forgotten. The humans, their silence, their shadow, their power. No one had seen their fleet in generations. No one had witnessed their weapons. No one had tested their borders. And yet the fear remained. 1,000 years passed. The records faded. The names of old warlords were forgotten. The histories of ancient battles crumbled into dust. And still the legend endured. Still the whispers continued. Still every empire, every species, every civilization that reached for the stars knew the rule, knew the warning, knew the sound, the whistle, and the silence that followed. The final test came with a species that had never heard the story. New, fresh, untouched by the paranoia that had gripped the galaxy for so long. They were explorers, pioneers, unaware of the unspoken laws that governed the void. They charted the old territories, saw no Terran fleets, no Terran colonies, no Terran defenses, and so they moved forward. They claimed space, expanded, bold, proud, unafraid, and then one day their ships stopped, their systems failed, their worlds flickered, and in the depths of an uncharted nebula a single signal was received. Not a transmission, not a warning, a sound, a whistle, and then nothing. The galaxy trembled, because even after all this time, even after the centuries of silence, the truth had not changed. The humans were still there, still waiting, still watching, and no one would ever challenge them again. Because power was not war, power was not fleets, power was not weapons, power was a memory, a story, a lesson carved so deeply into the fabric of the universe that no one dared to forget. And the humans had become eternal, not through conquest, not through force, but through something far greater, an idea, a whisper, a single quiet sound, and the silence that followed. Forever, the universe settled, the legend became myth, the myth became a ghost, and still the silence endured. Deep in the void, beyond the reach of maps, beyond the edge of any empire, something remained. Something old, something unseen, something waiting. The humans had never vanished. They had never been absent. They had simply watched. And when the stars called again, when the cycle repeated, when the next empire grew too bold, they would remind them. Not with war, not with destruction, not with fleets, just a sound, a whistle, and the silence that followed. Forever. And so, the galaxy endured. New civilizations rose. New species claimed the stars. But always the shadow of the whistle remained. Because history was not written in battles. It was not forged in war. It was shaped in silence. And the humans, they had left their mark. Not in ruins, not in conquest, but in a lesson. A simple, undeniable truth. The most dangerous sound in the universe was not the roar of war. It was not the scream of weapons. It was not the thunder of destruction. It was a whisper, a memory, a question. What happens if they do it again? And no one ever wanted to find out. Forever. And so time stretched, the silence grew, and the humans, they remained unseen, untouched, not forgotten but worse. They had become something beyond memory, beyond myth, a force woven into the fabric of existence itself. Not through power, not through dominance, but through uncertainty. And so long as that uncertainty remained, so long as no species dared to question it, the humans had already won. Again, and again, and again, for all eternity, because that was the final truth. The whistle was not a sound. It was not a call. It was not a warning. It was a choice the galaxy had made long ago, a choice it would never unmake, because in the end it was not the humans who feared war. It was not the humans who hesitated. It was everyone else. And that was the most powerful silence of all. Forever. And as the universe expanded, as new worlds were born, as time erased the old and ushered in the new, the whistle remained. Not a sound, not a weapon, presence, a shadow just beneath the surface of reality, a question unspoken, a fear unchallenged, and that was all it ever needed to be, because the greatest power in the universe was not war, was not force, was not conquest, it was doubt, and the humans had become doubt itself, endless, unseen, eternal, and the galaxy would never forget, not in a million years, not in 10 million, not in forever, because some sounds never truly fade, and some silences last longer than the stars. Forever.